Get ready to dive into a story that will invite us to think more deeply about the world, ourselves, and the meaning of everything around us. Don't forget to prepare a comfortable place, calm your mind, and let's start this journey together. It won't be long now before we meet, my dear Sophie. I thought you would return to the major's cabin. That's why I left all the cards from Hilda's father there. That was the only way they could be delivered to her. And don't worry about how she will get them. A lot can happen before June 15th. We have seen how the Hellenistic philosopher recycled the ideas of earlier philosophers. Some even attempt to turn their predecessors into religious prophets. Plotinus came close to claiming Plato as the savior of humanity. But as we know, another savior was born during the period we have just been discussing, and that happened outside the Greco-Roman era. I refer to Jesus of Nazareth. In this chapter, we will see how Christianity gradually began to permeate the Greco-Roman world, more or less the same way that Hilda's work has gradually begun to permeate ours. Jesus was a Jew, and the Jews belonged to Semitic cultures. The Greeks and the Romans belonged to Indo-European culture. European civilization has its roots in both cultures. But before we take a closer look at the way Christianity influenced Greco-Roman culture, we must examine its roots. The Indo-European. By Indo-European, we mean all the nations and cultures had used Indo-European languages. This covers all European nations except those whose inhabitants speak one of the Philo-Ugrian languages, or Basque. In addition, most Indian and Iranian languages belong to Indo-European family of languages. About 4,000 years ago, the primitive Indo-Europeans lived in areas bordering on the Black Sea and the Caspian Sea. From there, waves of these Indo-European tribes began to wander southeast into Iran and India, southwest to Greece, Italy, and Spain, westward through Central Europe to France and Britain, northwestward to Scandinavia, and northward to Eastern Europe and Russia. Wherever they went, the Indo-Europeans assimilated with the local culture, old Indo-European languages, and Indo-European religion came to play a dominant role. The ancient Indian, Vedic scriptures, and Greek philosophy, and for that matter Snorri Sturluson's mythology, are all written in related languages, but it is not only the languages that are related. Related languages often lead to related ideas. This is why we usually speak of an Indo-European culture. The culture of the Indo-Europeans was influenced most of all by their beliefs in many gods. This is called polytheism. The names of these gods, as well as much of the religious terminology recurred throughout the whole Indo-European area. I'll give you a few examples. The ancient Indians worshipped the celestial god Dyaus, which in Sanskrit means the sky, day, heaven. In Greek, this god is called Zeus, in Latin Jupiter, and in Old Norse, Tyr. So the names Dyaus, Zeus, Love, and Tyr are dialectal variants of the same word. You probably learned that the old Vikings believed in gods, which they call Asur. This is another word we find recurring all over the Indo-European area. In Sanskrit, the ancient classical language of India, the gods are called Asura, and in Persian Ahura. Another word for god is Deva in Sanskrit, Klaiva in Persian, Deus in Latin, and Devur In Old Norse, in Viking times, people also believed in a special group of fertility gods. These gods were referred to by a special collective name, Vanir, a word that is related to the Latin name for the goddess of fertility, Venus. Sanskrit has the related word va, which means desire. There is also a clear affinity to be observed in some of the Indo-European myths. In stories of the Old Norse gods, some of the myths are similar to the myths of India that were handed down from 2 to 3,000 years earlier. Although Norse myths reflect the Nordic environment and the Indian myths reflect the Indian, many of them retain traces of a common origin. We can see these traces most clearly in myths about immortal potions and the struggles of the gods against the monster of chaos. We can also see clear similarities in models of thought across the Indo-European cultures. A typical likeness is the way the world is seen as being the subject of a drama in which the force of good and evil confront each other in a relentless struggle. Europeans have therefore often tried to predict how the battles between good and evil will turn out. One could say with some truth that it was no accident that a great philosophy originated in the Indo-European sphere of culture. Indian, Greek, and Norse mythology all have obvious leanings toward a philosophy or speculative view of the world. The Indo-Europeans saw insight into the history of the world. We can even trace a particular word for insight or knowledge from one culture to another all over the Indo-European world. In Sanskrit, it is vidya. The word is identical to the Greek word ade, which was so important in Plato's philosophy. From Latin, we have the word video, but on Roman ground, the word simply means to see, whereas I see can mean I understand. And in the cartoons, a light bulb can flash on a buff Woody Woodpecker hat when he gets a bright idea. In English, we know the words wise and wisdom in German, Wesen, Norwegian has the word Peter, which has the same root as the Indian word Vidya, the Greek idea, and the Latin theo. All in all, we can establish that sight was the most important of the sense for Indo-Europeans. The literature of Indians, Greeks, Persians, and Teutons alike was characterized by great cosmic visions. It was also characteristic for the European culture to make pictures and sculptures of the gods and of mythical events. Lastly, the Indo-Europeans had a side view of history. This is the belief that the story goes in cycles, just like the seasons of the year. There is thus no beginning and no end to history, but there are different civilizations that rise and fall in an eternal interplay between birth and death. Both of the two great Oriental religions, Hinduism and Buddhism, are Indo-European in origin, so is Greek philosophy, and we can see a number of clear parallels between Hinduism and Buddhism on the one hand and Greek philosophy on the other. Even today, Hinduism and Buddhism are strongly imbued with philosophical reflection. Not infrequently we find in Hinduism and Buddhism an emphasis on the fact that the deity is present in all things, and that man can become one with God through religious insight. To achieve this requires the practice of deep self-communion or meditation. Therefore, in the Orient, passivity and seclusion can be religious ideal. In ancient Greece, there were many people who believed in an ascetic or religiously secluded way of life. For the salvation of the soul, many aspects of medieval monastic life can be traced back to beliefs dating from the Greco-Roman civilization. Similarly, the transmigration of the soul, or the cycle of rebirth, is a fundamental belief in many Indo-European cultures. For more than 2,500 years, the ultimate purpose of life for every Indian has been the release from the cycle of rebirth. Plato also believed in the transmigration of the soul. Let us now turn to the Semites, Sophie. They belong to a completely different culture, with a completely different language. The Semites originated in the Arabian Peninsula, but they also migrated to different parts of the world. The Jews lived far from their home for more than 2,000 years. Semitic history, a religion reached farthest away from its roots by the way of Christendom, although Semitic culture also became widely spread via Islam. All three Western religions, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, share a Semitic background. The Muslim Holy Scripture, the Quran, and the Old Testament were both written in the Semitic family of languages. One of the Old Testament words for God has the same semantic root as the Muslim Allah. When we cap to Christianity, the picture becomes more complicated. Christianity also has a Semitic background, but the New Testament was written in Greek. And when the Christian theology or creed was formulated, it was influenced by Greek and Latin, and thus also by Hellenistic philosophy. The Indo-Europeans believed in many different gods. It was just as characteristic for the Semites that from earliest times they were united in their belief in one God. This is called monotheism. Judaism, Christianity, and Islam all share the same fundamental idea that there is only one God. The Semites also have in common a linear view of history. In other words, history was seen as an ongoing line. In the beginning, God created the world, and that was the beginning of history. But one day history will end, and there will be judgment day, when God judges the living and the dead. The role played by history is an important feature of these three Western religions. The belief is that God intervenes in the course of history, even that history exists, in order that God may manifest His will in the world. Just as He once led Abraham to the promised land, He leads mankind steps through history to the day of judgment. When that day comes, all evil in the world will be destroyed, with their strong emphasis on God's activity in the course of history. The Semites were preoccupied with the writing of history for many thousands of years, and this heretical root constitutes the very core of their holy scriptures. Even today, the city of Jerusalem is a significant religious center for Jews, Christians, and Muslims alike. This indicates something of the common background of these three religions. The city comprises prominent synagogues, churches, and mosques. It is therefore deeply tragic that Jerusalem should have become a bone of contention, with people killing each other by the thousand because they cannot agree on who is to have ascendancy over this eternal city. Whether you and one day succeed in making Jerusalem a holy shrine for all three religions, we see that the most important of the sins for Indo-Europeans was sight. How important hearing was the Semitic cultures is just as interesting. It is no accident that the Jewish creed begins with the words, "Hear, O Israel." In the Old Testament, we read how the people heard the word of the Lord, and the Jewish prophets usually begin their sermons with the words, "Thus spake Jehovah." Hearing the word of God is also emphasized in Christianity. The religious ceremonies of Christianity, Judaism, and Islam are all characterized by reading aloud or reciting. I also mentioned that the Indo-Europeans always made pictorial representation or sculptures of their gods. It was just as characteristic for the Semites that they never did. They were not supposed to create pictures or sculptures of God or the deity. The Old Testament comments that the people should not make any image of God. This is still law today both for Judaism and Islam. Within Islam, there is moreover general aversion to both photography and art, because people should not compete with God in creating anything. But the Christian church are full of pictures of Jesus and God. You are probably thinking, true enough, Sophie, but this is just one example of how Christendom was influenced by the Greco-Roman world. In contrast to the great religions of the Orient, the three Western religions emphasize that there is a distance between God and His creation. The purpose is not to be released from the cycle of rebirth, but to be redeemed from sin and blame. Moreover, religious life is characterized more by prayer, sermons, and the study of the scriptures, and by self-communion and meditation. What will happen next? How will Sophie deal with her deepening question? Find out in the next episode.